Welcome to another edition of the Dental Today podcast. Thank you for stopping by. This is brought to you by Lab Media TV. My name is Hezekiah Morales, and here we go. Remember to follow us on social media at Lab Media TV. And we have another special guest today. This gentleman is an instructor, a lecturer, a motivational speaker. He's also a columnist or a writer. He has a few other interesting titles which we will get into. He's a key opinion leader for GC America and all the things that we just mentioned. He also works with GC America, but it's not limited to this company. He also will elaborate on that. He is the owner of Smile Boutique. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Dane Barlow. Dane, thank you for coming. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
You just got back from a special trip.
Which one? I do a bunch.
Oh, because wait a minute, are you still in Oregon?
No, so I'm in Idaho, but
Okay,
I was recently in. I did a week of charity work in Mexico, and then I came back and did the American Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry scientific session and board meetings. Got reelected to 2 more years on the board of directors. And then I went to Virginia and did some immediate load cases and some conversions at the clinic there with the oral surgeon and the general practitioner. And then we went down to LA, back to back. I think I was home for 16 hours getting cases out and then got back on a plane. So yeah, I've done a bunch of trips here recently. I've actually, I think, been away more than I've been home.
Wow.
This month, and that's not something I generally like to do. Last year I did it 1 month, and I came back. My son grew an inch, about a quarter inch a week, and when I got home, he gave me an overhug, like instead of being smaller than me, he comes up and hugs me from up above. And I'm like, whoa, you're getting
what happened
tall.
here?
So he's getting really close to passing me up.
Wow. How old are your children?
So my son is 17, and then my daughters are 16 or 15 and a half, and then 14.
Wow, that's beautiful. That is precious. Yeah, big boy then. He's taking care of the family while daddy's away. That's
absolutely. Yeah, I think
important.
this summer he's gonna this when I was his age, I grew 4 inches this year. So this summer he could grow, 2 or 3 inches and pass me up pretty bad. And I'm the shortest in my family. My little brother is 3 inches taller than me. My older brother's 2 inches taller. So I think he's just gonna go right past me this year.
Wow, yeah, it's always amazing to see these young ones just come up unexpectedly and just grow that fast.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you this. I gave that brief little introduction. I do apologize. I did leave that out. You are a board member of the American Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry, and you have been doing work for them for quite a while now. You are an instructor, a lecturer. You're currently writing for GC, but right now you have a special project you are currently working on, and we'll get on that in just a minute. But before we get into all this, you and I were having a conversation. You weren't all about teeth.
No.
You weren't always all about teeth. Can you please elaborate that for the listeners that maybe know you but don't know the story behind the smile?
That's a very elaborate question because I can go on for a half hour just on that. I'll try to shorten it down, but I built houses. I actually used to do some import and export. I manufactured framed artwork for furniture stores and shipped to Canada and Mexico and then all over the United States. I did trade shows for that. And then I started building homes. And then I started a few different subcontracting companies. I ran a toxic mold company that we removed toxic mold from California to Colorado, Washington, Idaho. And we did drainage systems for crawl spaces that had water problems. And then the recession hit. And lo and behold, all of my businesses were in the home, industry, the home building industry, either through furniture or through, all these subcontracting companies. Everything was involved. So, and I had some cash saved up, but we had some money embezzled. I ended up putting 5 people in jail.
Wow.
But after a year of just paying, not paying myself, paying my employees, and paying my debts, we ran out of cash. I had probably $250,000 that was stolen. And so when I ran out of cash, there was just nothing left. I tried to move back in my one of my houses that I owned that had 50% equity in it. And the bank literally told me, Mr. Barlow, we're going to make money when we sell your house. And so they would not let me move back into it.
Wow.
And they actually sold it at auction, made a little bit of money. But, you know, it was like my whole world was falling apart. And I had a little bit of cash left. So I called up my sister and I said, you know, can I move in your garage and, you know, turn it into an apartment? And so I took the last $3,000 I had, I cut a hole in the ceiling, I built some stairs, and slowly built a studio up there. And then we moved into the attic of her garage. And I lived there for 2 years. I had one simple goal. It was, to put it in perspective, I was doing probably about 20 grand a month, pretty average. And within 90 days, my income shifted to $1,200 a month. And then it stayed that way for a year till we ran out of savings. So we literally lost everything. I had to start over. And it was a real difficult time for me emotionally. But I decided I was going to, my mom had always told me my dad got out of the military and he said, you know, with $10,000, I can do anything. And so I said, well, you know, I'm going to set one goal. I'm going to save $10,000. I'm going to change my life. And I didn't really know what I was going to do. I just set the pace of, okay, I'm living on 1,200. So anything I can make over that, I'm just going to save it. And at the end of those, almost a year and a half from that day I set that goal, I was able to save $20,000. And so then I was looking for all kinds of businesses and things I wanted to get into. I did some clothing manufacturing, some jiu-jitsu gis actually, and some other things, and realized that's not what I wanted to do full time. And I had started doing jiu-jitsu. I had actually, how I got introduced into teeth was I was remodeling a house for a gentleman who made teeth. And instead of paying me, he's like, how about I do your teeth? And so he got a dentist on board, and it basically cost me 6 months of income. And it was a sacrifice. And my wife and I talked about it, and we decided, yeah, let's go ahead and invest in ourselves. And so I gained some confidence from that, and I started closing every single deal I got in front of. I had a 98% close rate. And
Wow.
So all my remodeling
huge.
projects, anything I needed, I mean, if I got in front of them, they were shaking my hand, and they were paying me even more money than other people because they could tell that I commanded the knowledge of their problems, which was toxic mold at the time. That's what I fell back on, was the drainage and toxic mold. And so that company started to come back, and by the end of those 2 years, I was doing about $1,000 a week, which was enough. You know, that's like a pretty decent base income for Idaho, and all that time, you know, I was always praying, you know, tell me what to do and when to do it, and I will. You know, I just need to change my life. I need to do something different, and that message never came. Like, it never came, and so I thought, okay, well, I'm sticking with construction for now. Things are starting to come back, and I guess they'll be okay. And so we moved into a house and started renting a house. And then, like, about a month later, I got this impression I needed to call up the guy that made my teeth and ask him for a job. And I was kind of like pissed, you know. I was like, suddenly I just feel like I'm supposed to go do this thing, and there's no way this guy's going to pay me good money. I was like, I'm going to be making $8 an hour and just learning a whole new trade. I go, that's crazy. Why would the universe tell me to do this now? And I talked about it with my wife, and she's like, you know, if that's what you feel, you just need to do it. So I called him up and invited him to breakfast and told him, hey, you know, I just had this feeling. I need to call you up and ask you for a job. And if you'll hire me, I'll work for free for 6 months and prove to you that I can make you money. And I did some consulting with this guy during the recession, because he was doing like $70,000 a month in his lab, and then it dropped down to 35. And when he was only doing 35 with his payroll, he ended up losing about 10 or 15 a month. And so he was kind of in the same boat as me, just starting to lose all of his savings. And so I went through and helped him restructure all of his loans. We called up all the banks, and we, you know, got all these deals worked out and turned over properties and got rid of Porsches and all these other things. And all of a sudden, you know, he had a $35,000 a month, and he was having a $15,000 profit. And so I did have a little bit of history with him, and I already kind of proved myself. So he was shocked that I was asking him this, but said, you know what, let's try it. So he hired me to be the janitor. And by the end of the week, I was answering phones. And into the third week, I started doing model work.
Wow.
And my model work was really good. I handled it pretty quick. And so he started having me fit all of his cases, cosmetic only. We were doing 10-unit cases every day. And so at about 6 months, we had a guy come in that paid him for training. And he spent 4 days with us and a whole day with me working. At the end of the day, he grabbed all of his case and his tools, and he went into Brad's office and he slammed the door shut. And he was Eastern European, right? So this is all his personality. It's just part of his culture. He wasn't even trying to be rude. But I was like, my feelings were a little hurt because, I'm a timid guy. So I'm thinking, man, this guy is mad at me and I must have done something wrong. And I wish I knew because I didn't mean to offend him, whatever. And so the next day was Saturday. And so he trained with my mentor that Saturday all by himself. And on Monday I came in. This is at the 6-month mark. I came in on Monday and he brought me into his office and he handed me a ceramic bowl, a Tanaka brush, and a porcelain tray, a wet tray. He said, from now on, you're just going to copy everything I do. You're going to mimic all my movements, brush strokes. You're going to, basically, I want you to learn to layer because that guy came in and said he'd never seen a model tech and somebody doing the fitting who worked like he owned the company. Is like the way that you refine your margins, the work that you do, and how much attention you put into everything you do. He was jealous because most people aren't like that. And he's like, he came in here and got mad at me and told me if I didn't give you something better to do, I was going to lose probably the best talent he'd ever seen. And so he's like, so I'm teaching you ceramics today. And unfortunately, that went on for 6 months. I'd fit 2 cases every day. And I'd layer side by side, and what took him 2.5 hours would take me 6 or 7 hours. I sometimes had to work on my case the next day. So every day we just did 2 cases. We did that 4 days a week, and Friday was a catch-up day. And like I mentioned, unfortunately, at the end of that year, 6 months doing ceramics, he walked in on December 3rd, and he said, Dane, I'm selling the company. I don't want to do this anymore, and I want you to send everybody home when they come in today. And I was like, man, like what the heck? And
where did this come from? Right.
Nobody's going to hire me. Nobody's like, I don't have enough experience to go get a job as a ceramist anywhere. And so people came in and I was like, listen, guys, I don't know how we're going to work through this, but we got cases that need to be delivered. So I will personally guarantee your guys' paychecks. And I could only keep a core group of people, but I pulled those guys together. I sent everybody else home. And I promised these guys I'd pay them out of my own paycheck if we just kept getting these cases done. And I was going to try to figure out a way to buy the company. So I invited my mentor to lunch, and I said, I don't know how. I failed. I don't have any money, but I love making teeth. I just love showing up and not having to worry about where my paycheck comes. I just made teeth, and it was wonderful. And so I told him I think and feel that somehow I can put this money together and I can buy the lab. And so I said, give me 30 days. And I didn't raise the money in 30 days. Christmas came. It's the beginning of January. And I was like, I need more time. He's like, I can only give you, 14 days or something crazy.
2 weeks.
And so I was like, nobody raises money over Christmas. This is not something you do in the financial sector. Everybody knows they shut down for Christmas. Past New Year, like the 4th of January, there's this whole period of time you do not do anything in finances. It's absolutely shut down. So but I went to work, and within those next 14 days, I was able to find enough investors to just give me cash, hard money.
Wow.
Offered them 20%, 25% interest.
Wow.
I offered stock, anything I could to keep this opportunity alive. And then I set this atrocious goal to pay off all that money to those investors in 1 year. And when I told my mentor that, he just flipped out on me. He said, that's impossible. You'll never do it. You should have just said, I wish I could make $1 million. And he's like, you'll never pay off that much debt. He's like, I've been in debt for 30 years. There's no way you're going to pay it all off.
Wow.
And I just said, you know what? I'm not like you. And I said this in my brain, but I didn't live I was used to living on $1,200, living in a garage. Like, this is not something he could comprehend, And so I maintained the same lifestyle. I paid myself 18 grand that year. I paid off 100,000 cash, and I hit my goal before the year ended. I paid all those people back. Actually, in Thanksgiving, I had enough money in my account to pay off my loans to these investors. And I just got this overwhelming feeling of, like, all those 2 years that I was poor and living in that garage, like churches or people, I don't know who it was, people would drop off food for like Thanksgiving and Christmas,
Wow.
and then pound on the garage door, and you go down there and there'd be like all this food in a basket. And
Wow.
I cried. Of course I cried.
God
And
was
I
looking
thought,
out
so
for you,
here
brother.
it's Thanksgiving. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to call one of the churches, and I'm going to give them all this money to buy turkeys for poor people.
Wow.
And so I just wrote a check and cleaned out my commercial account, and they used the money to buy Thanksgiving. And then I had a great Christmas, and I had enough money to pay everybody off again. And I was like, you know what? It's Christmas. We need to buy Christmas for people. So instead of making that final payment, we bought Christmas for a few families. And,
Wow.
it was an amazing experience giving back. And I was hooked on giving back. That year, I called up a buddy I met in jiu-jitsu and told him I was going to restore his teeth. It took us 2 years and about $35,000. Redid all of his teeth.
Wow.
Flew him in to Idaho from Oregon. And one of the greatest cases I've ever done. Super, super happy with the results. And that just became a part of who I am. Like, I'm constantly doing these charity cases. I just finished one today. Got some great photos. Probably write an article about that next week. But it's just something I have to do. I have to do this. I felt driven to do that. And it's just become part of who I am. And right before I hit that year mark, I had another good month. We made enough money, and I still hit my goal. Wow. So it's like, you can give, you can help people, and it doesn't mean you're changing your stars. Like, I already changed my stars, like they were already headed a certain direction. So it wasn't going to affect me if I hit that goal or not. Helping people was more important, but we are able to do both. And I think the universe will provide, you just do your part, and everything seems to work out. So that's kind of my transition from building houses, and I still build houses. I'm developing a subdivision right now, a small subdivision, a townhome subdivision. I'll probably put in 14 units. That should come online next year, and then I'll take commercial space there when I build it out. Probably put my new lab in there, and we'll see what happens. But it's just part of the game.
And now you're the mayor of Smiletown.
I am the mayor of Smiletown.
That is a crazy story, and it's crazy. You had mentioned something. You had mentioned part of your story, and I definitely believe it's important for the listeners to know the story behind the smile, because many times I believe people see the result of let's say the investment into the craft, but they don't know where it comes from. And so that leads me to ask you this. So I do see here that you are big in discipline. You write about discipline in sticking to in sales. I did a little bit of sales a while back, and there was something that they always, or my mentor would always tell me: stick to the pitch. And I see here that something that you wrote about was sticking to the process and working rather than working from memory, working by nature. What does that mean?
So I think one of the most important things that we can do, when I took over this lab, my mentor disappeared. So when I looked at a case, and I had something Malcolm Gladwell calls in one of his books, blink. I had this ability to look at teeth and say, there's something wrong, but I didn't know exactly what was wrong. So I started collecting natural teeth and taking molds. I would stop people in the street who had a beautiful smile and say, hey, listen, I've got this laboratory. I'd show them my website. Like, just so you know, I'm not some creeper. This is my laboratory. It's a very exquisite, well-manufactured building. It's very artistic. But I am learning about teeth, and I want to be able to make beautiful teeth like yours. And if you would come by my lab and go to my dentist and get impressions, and then come by my lab so I can take some photos of your teeth, then I'll pay you $50 for that. And we'd have them sign photo releases. And then I would use these photos of natural teeth and their molds And anytime I looked at a case, I was like, man, there's something wrong here. I got to figure it out. I would pull out all these cases and I would start looking at the teeth, trying to figure out what am I looking at that's wrong. And I was also I wrote notes, like copious notes about everything, temperatures, times, how you bake your porcelains and different types of porcelains and how, what, and why. So I had this huge notebook of drawings and science, and I became a real science nerd about material science and dentistry and just weird stuff. Like I would get on and read patents about different materials, try to understand what's in them, learn about crystal nucleation, how they form the crystals, the substructures they grew crystals on, so that you could get the right crystal structure for the material. This was something I was driven to hyper focus. I am ADHD. And a lot of people think, oh, that means you get distracted. And it can, but it also means I hyper focus. And I'm the type of person, when I get into something, I hyper focus almost in an insane amount. I go above and beyond, like trying to understand every little part of the puzzle, because that solving that puzzle becomes my drive and my force. And so it was just very important for me to look at natural teeth. And I think when you're working on natural teeth and you're trying to do textures, whatever, you need to look at natural teeth and apply those textures, apply those principles to those teeth. Instead of just grabbing a case and being like, oh, here's what I do, and you push it through, grab out some teeth and look at the patient and say, what was their natural? And, we're enhancing. I don't take everything 100% too far, because they won't look like that patient anymore. And so I'm trying to look at what they have, but enhancing it in color and value. And then I'm enhancing sometimes the youthfulness of the teeth with the embrasures. And finally, I'm just trying to get some of those shapes better, but trying to keep it natural at the same time. So I'll take aspects of their teeth from the pre-op model, and then I'll look at my collection of models that I have, and I'll look for the textures, I'll look for designs that are similar, and I'll start to draw those shapes on the teeth before I cut those textures in. And that way, I'll look at the color photos and break them down, and be like, man, what are these mamelons? How should I make these mamelons? Or how should I make this look like I've got some luminosity that comes out of the incisal edge for mamelons, or should I lay it down as in value? There's a lot of different ways that you can get that incisal edge to illuminate and alumbrar. That's the word. I'm trying to figure out how to say that word in English, but that became my drive, to find ways to incorporate nature all the time. Make sure you always have natural teeth on my desks, on my computers. And then I'll blow up a picture on a big TV, and I'll look at the case under this huge TV, and then I'll start looking, breaking it down with some natural teeth in my hands, trying to figure out what can I do to help this one. And, we never stop learning. This is not a process that ends. It's always a constant journey. And I think with anything worth it in life, you come to realize you don't ever arrive. It's not like you just get there one day and, oh, okay, none of that other stuff mattered. What I can tell you, even with money, when my goal was money, I attained it. And then all I had was money. I thought, oh man, that was kind of a waste. I didn't get a pilot's license. I didn't, I wrote a list of all the things I hadn't done yet because I was pursuing money. And then I lost it all. And I had an opportunity to start over. And that's with my relationship with my kids. I used to be a workaholic, and I put in crazy amount of hours. When I took over the lab, I actually sat down with my family and I let my kids vote. I said, we got to give up cable. We got to give up, nobody will have cell phones but me. We're going to have to do no allowance. And we can't have Christmas this year because it's going to take all the cash I have. And we put all that on the table, and I said, I don't get a vote. I go, it's too easy for me to say, I want you to let me do this, or we're going to do this. That's not who I am. I said, kids, I need you guys to choose. It's going to take all of us sacrifice and make this happen. But if we do, it'll be worth it. We'll pull off something impossible. I truly believe we were doing something impossible at the time. And I even told this to my employees. I was like, man, you know what? I guarantee to pay you all first. I will make sure you're always paid first. And so just come with me. But we could fail. We could fail at this. And you guys will go on to get great jobs, and I'll have to go back to construction. But I was like, if we pull off this impossible thing, we'll have a story to tell people. And I go, there's just nothing better in life than that, to just be able to tell people, hey, you know what? You can have hope. When I finally bought a house, I had this gentleman come over to do some construction, and he looked at me one day, and And I was frustrated because he didn't show up on time. And I was kind of chatting with him about responsibilities and setting deadlines. And I go, in construction, all you have to do to be successful is finish on time. That's all you have to do. And you become the best contractor in town. And he's like, dude, you don't know what it's like to be poor. And I was like, whoa. I go, you come here. And I brought him into my office and I walked him through everything I had been through, how some days I didn't have food. And I was so afraid to eat my kids' food and take food out of their mouths that I would have to leave the house. Or I one time I grabbed a can of garbanzo beans, and that was my dinner. That's all I ate that day. There was 2 weeks I ate Triscuits and bologna. That was it for 2 weeks. And it's like you do. And I was too successful before to understand how to get on food stamps. And I truly found out that if you need a hand up, you take it. And we finally figured all that stuff out, how to get on welfare. But it was not for the first year living in that garage. We didn't get any help. And finally, I started getting some help here and there for insurance. And then I realized, man, the way the system is, it almost holds you back. There is a threshold where your quality of life is better to remain on welfare than to move on. And so I was struggling with this. I was like, this is kind of interesting that I'm right here. I'm right at the cusp, but I'm losing all this help. And I'm living worse than I was, making less on help. And so, but it's not who I am. So I just said, hey, we're going to push right through it. This is a sales issue. I just got to go out and sell more. And if I sell more, my problems are solved. And so that's what we did. At the end of 2 years, I paid off $250,000 in debt. All the equipment was paid off. Everything was paid off. And so, it wasn't just a single year of doing impossible things. It was 2. And during that same time, I'd set the goal to be a world champion. I got ranked #1 in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as a middleweight brown belt. I won all these competitions all over the place. And actually, the year before, I thought I was going to win the Pan American Championship. I was in great shape, and my stepdad killed himself, and I cleaned it up because my mom didn't want anybody in the house, and so I had this feeling that she was going to go do it herself, and I just couldn't let her do that. So I snuck over there in the middle of the night and I cleaned it all up for her, and I got the house remodeled within 2 days. So you couldn't even tell anything happened. But then, I'm talking in the funeral, and a week later I'm at the Pan American Championship, and man, it did not happen. I lost by a tie. We were tied, and the ref's decision, the ref just gave it to the other guy.
Wow.
And I just don't believe, I don't believe in that. Like, you can't have this tie. You can't perform so poorly that the ref can't decide. And that was the last time I had to match that close. Like, even if it was a tie and there was anything else going on and it was close, I made sure I fought harder than anybody and was so emphatic that they just said, man, this guy's amped, and he, even though he didn't win, he's going at it. And they started giving me these passes whenever it was close. So the next year I went back, and this is when I finally got ranked #1. But I went back to the Pans, and nobody scored a point against me.
Wow.
Went through the whole thing, got the gold medal.
Wow.
Very emotional moment for me and several members on my team that were with me, and that scored me enough points that I held the #1 position for 8 months.
Wow.
And then I went to Worlds, and Worlds I got a bronze. Wish I could say that I won a gold at Worlds that year, but I was ranked #1 for that whole period of time. And then I met all those other guys on that top 10 in the Worlds. And the round right before medals, actually I was ahead on points, and this guy jumped on my foot and went to do a toe fold, and I could hear all the bones crackling, and I just kept my mouth shut. Because as long as you don't yell, they don't tap you out or forfeit you, So I kept my mouth quiet as I heard all the bones crackle. It was like it went silent. And that was the longest, 20 seconds in my entire life, even to this day. And and he heard him crinkling, and he's like, man, I broke your foot. And then he reached over for the other one to break my other foot. And just as he was moving, I was able to get back out, and I got back on top, and I attacked him and attacked his back and went to choke him out. We ran out of time. So I didn't give up very many points in the exchange there. And because I didn't yell, I actually won and went into the medals round. And I didn't know if my foot was broken or not, but that same guy found me later. He goes, and he's one of Marcelo Garcia's black belts now, but he found me later. And actually, that's a funny story too. But the Alliance is 10 years or 12 years world champions. That's the team that I was fighting for. and they put me on the B team for that championship. This guy was on the A team, and so I had to beat him. Like I had to beat him because we wouldn't score team points if I beat him, but if he beat me, yeah, we'd score team points. But I was so like bothered that they didn't put me on the A team. I told them I was going to win. I was like, I'm winning it this year. You guys put me on the A team, and they didn't do it. So anyway, I beat him, and then they didn't score the points. But he found me in the audience later. He's like, dude, you are the toughest guy I have ever fought. I thought I broke your foot, and you just sat through it like it wasn't anything. I heard the bones crinkling. There's no way that didn't hurt, and yet you had this space of just like stoic, quiet, like you're just gonna win, and I did. I was so far ahead in points. There's no way I was gonna lose at the last minute to a little thing like that. So, and some people tell me I'm crazy, but I'm telling you, man, we have certain points in our life, and I knew that after this, I might not have the time, to dedicate that it takes to be a world champion, like consistently, and that's the thing. It's like, becoming a world champion is easier than staying there, and we see it all the time.
Yes,
Ronda
absolutely.
Rousey, Jones, and you have two phases of life. You have I'm 20 to 24, right? You're just super athletic, and you'll get a world title, but you're still immature and you do dumb things, and that's what many of those champions have done.
Give up position. Forget about the fundamentals.
They'll fight a way they aren't used to fighting, or they just do some weird stuff. Or John Jones does cocaine. Some guys smoke marijuana. And it's like, dude, I signed the same
Diaz
contract that Lance Armstrong signs. They could come test me at any time. That was the contract I signed. So you just don't do that. And these guys, they do that. At that age, they do these weird things. And then you have one more chance. What happens is your physical peakness it peaks and it starts to drop just a little bit. And you're about 37 to 41. And at that age, about 37 to 41, what you do have is wisdom and science. And you're paying attention to the science. You warm up properly. You eat properly. You take all the right vitamins. You do everything according to the science in the books. Like, I knew how much water that I could actually absorb in between matches. So even though I'm like sweating and I'm thinking, man, I just want to drink a quart of water. No, if you look at how much time you're going to have, and it would be 8 to 12 ounces of water is all you can consume in between matches. And you want to drink a bunch, but what happens is if you leave that in your stomach, you don't have energy. Your energy is all going to digesting food. And so you literally have to take only the amount you can digest, and then you're at your peak for that next match, and you got to warm up properly and stretch. So I was doing all those things like a science, and that's why you have one more chance at that age when people take it seriously. They're like, I'm going to do this, but you don't drink alcohol, you don't drink a soda, you don't drink coffee, you don't eat red meat. You just eat it very healthy. If it comes in a box or a can, you don't consume it. It's just whole foods and
a box, a can, or
organic, and lean. And that's, that was my life. And that's the discipline that it takes to be great. And what you find is that discipline in any activity of your life will traverse to all other parts. So the way I ran my business was very disciplined. The way I got my cases done early was disciplined. I had all these things that I was following both in jiu-jitsu and then relating it to making teeth. All the same ways that I set goals to be a world champion, I set those same goals with making teeth. Right down to, I want to lecture internationally. I set the goal to lecture internationally, and within a month, I locked down my first Mexico trip.
Yeah, which you're doing some work right now with Alta Técnica Dental from Mexico City, and that's exciting. I think what was it? When was the first time we met, Dane?
I almost want to say it was in Mexico.
I believe
at one of the shows. And if it wasn't, you had already heard about me, and then we met each other in Chicago, and you might have seen their broadcast that year.
Yeah.
When I did that lecture, it's hard to say. It's like
I know. It was a little weird.
Now I just see a familiar face. I don't put it back to that. What was that
moment? Same thing. I mean, I think it's a little different though. I think, man, it's so hard to, but yeah, we did speak, this past time, because we already know each other, and then
we already knew each other in Chicago, because actually you commented
that, which is very, very exciting. But which I couldn't even sit through one of your lectures there because again I was on the floor and we were
Yep.
doing some sales with MPF with Chicago Dental, which you do some work with them as well for the
Yeah.
GC brand. You were saying?
Oh, I just had to plug in my phone. So, but yeah, I've got a lot of things going on with Mexico. That was the start of it. You know, every time I set a goal, I was able to pull it off. I actually started writing articles for Ivoclar early, and I just did it for free. And then I would call people up and be like, "Hey, do you need a course?" And I'd go do a course, and call up Ivoclar and be like, "Hey, will you send me some materials? I'm going to do a course." And they would supply me materials. You know, I did a lot of things for them. Was in the Smile to the Max program. We shot some video of my story. And eventually that turned into needing. I was actually looking for a better ceramic product and searching all over the place, trying to find something with micro grain porcelain for low fusing. And that's about when GC came on board with their ceramic, and they gave me the kit and said, try it out. And I was like, oh, I don't know, man. I want to buy my stuff. I don't want to feel like, you know, you gave me something and then I had to make a choice. And it took me about 4 months to actually use it. But when I used that ceramic, I finally just, for 2 weeks, that's all I did. All my cases were with their ceramics. And that first Saturday after the end of those 2 weeks, a couple of doctors called me on a Saturday to tell me, I don't know what it is. It looks exactly the same as what you've done before, but there was something about it. It just popped. It was just different, you know, and better. I don't know what you did, but thank you. It was great. It looked great in the mouth. And I'm like, I was thinking to myself, oh my goodness. I actually thought to myself, I thought, this is terrible, right? Because I was an Ivoclar guy, and now I'm using a product I like better, and it wasn't theirs. I was like, oh, what do I do? And it still, they kept telling me to come over and work with them. It still took me another 6 months to switch over, but I started using that ceramic, and literally from that day, I never touched the other stuff again. I just stuck with GC. And when they came out with their ingots, I loved them right away. Actually wrote a 6 or 7 page report on my observations of the material and why I felt it was better and a very unique product from what I'd seen before. And I wrote them back, hey, you have an original product. This is not like lithium disilicate we've seen in the past. And it truly wasn't. The guy at GC that took my observations thought I was crazy. And because I was describing that they must have created smaller crystals, and through some process they've improved the glass, the glassy matrix that holds the crystals together. You know, so imagine it's kind of like in construction you'd have a beam. You know, you have a big old beam cut out of a tree, right? And it has a certain strength. And then we came along with glue lam. They cut little strands of wood and they inserted glue inside that, and it increased the strength of those beams. And so now all homes have glue lam because glue lam is just a better product. It doesn't have any air voids. It doesn't have, you know, the genetic defects that wood has. And so basically that's what GC had done. They've done all this R&D and they came up with a better type of glue in between their crystals. And it improved the water solubility. So it's got 1/5 the water solubility or acid solubility that you would have in Emax, for example. So the Lisi is less likely to have acid get in and break down that bond and cementation to the tooth. So, I mean, there's just a bunch of things with the science that was better. And so the guy at GC like thought I was crazy because like, there's no way you could know this. And I actually looked up patents and started researching it, you know, so I felt like I knew what I was talking about. And then when the R&D guys came from Japan to America to explain to the corporate what was done to the material to make it better, at lunchtime, he called me back and apologized for thinking I was crazy. He's like, you actually named out 3 things that nobody knew, that nobody was supposed to know about. And you described it completely without microscopes, without, you know, these other things. You discussed the process that must have had to have happened to create a product like this that has that type of response when you're working with it. And so, anyway, I got the apology, but I really like their products, and that's what kind of sold me on them. Continue to work with them, and they've been a great company. We've been able to create some ingots that I've been able to help design, and then we've got a new one I'm working on right now that I'm hoping to get them to produce. There's nothing else like it on the market, And that's the stuff I love doing. I love working with R&D and business development products and talking to people and educating. And you kind of mentioned earlier, that's with Alta Technica Dental. We're trying to get their magazine published in English and spread throughout the United States. But along with that, I started talking about, man, you guys need an academy of cosmetic dentistry or something that helps recognize the talents in Latin America. Because the American Academy, for example, we do it all in English. There's very little that's done in foreign languages. And also the economy down there, they can't afford to pay what we pay to be here. And to go to those meetings, it costs $3,000 to $5,000 to hit one of those meetings. And so, that's great for us. But when you live in Latin America, that's not proportionate.
A select few.
And that really, man, like I felt there's so much talent down there. There's so many great people down there. And I feel like, why should they be limited from opportunity? Right. We got to be able to educate them. We got to be able to get resources in their hands. We got to help teach them how to elevate their game if they want it, or those who are elevated, let's get them recognized. So people will choose to use these great ceramists, and those who work harder to prove themselves are going to be the people who get more work if we can find a way to recognize them. So that's when I came up with the idea and talked to Alta Technica Dental to help me do it. But we're going to create the Academia Cosmética de Latinoamericana.
Wow.
And that's going to be launched in August. And the hope would be to take that group down the road and integrate it back into the American Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry, treat it like an affiliate of some sort. But for right now, we just got to get it going, get people joining up and offer them the same opportunities that we have up here. And I think that's really important. In another way, it's kind of just another give back for me. Like I've been truly blessed by this industry and with the academy and cosmetics, and I want other people to be able to do that. And so I've worked with technicians down there who set goals and said, man, your story is amazing. I want to change my life. I want to work in the United States. I want to be a DTG, a Dental Technicians Guild member. I want to work in the United States, and I want to lecture and teach just like you do. What's it going to take? And I was like, you know what? You just do it. Oslo. That's why I say Oslo.
Yeah.
Like, you just have to do it, my friend. And I was like, there isn't a secret. The secret is that there isn't one. You just have to work harder than everybody else and not give up. And when they don't pay you enough, you do the best work you can anyway. And you send them the best product you possibly can out of pride. The same reason why when I was getting paid $8 an hour, I was producing the finest margins in the industry, the best model work I could produce. And when I was fitting cases and working them over, I was working them over like it was my life depended on it. And, I get emotionally involved in my cases. Like it's actually kind of hard for me sometimes when I send a case out, and if something doesn't go right, I feel pain. It's like I worry about my patient. My patient trusted me, and my doctor trusted me. And if I did anything to let them down, it affects me. And so, to a certain extent, that's good. And then there is a bad aspect of that where it's just like you can be too hard on yourself. And you got to recognize, man, none of us were born perfect. Right. It is a journey. You're born just knowing that you got to stop doing the things that hurt you. It's just like jujitsu, right? Somebody keeps giving you an arm bar, it hurts. You learn to stop giving the arm
very
bar.
Quick.
And
very
stop
quick.
getting choked. And so, it's the same across life. We're not perfect in anything, but with enough study and effort and discipline, you'll get there. You just start progressing. And when you write down your goals and when you talk about and take pictures and look back, you have verifiable evidence of your growth.
Wow. Yes.
Goal setting and pulling off the tasks and doing everything, journaling, you can look back in those journals, you can see what your journey was. And that's why I say it's all about the journey. It's all the journey. Your joy in life is the journey. What you're going through. It's not where you're headed. That's a great goal. But enjoy what you're doing right now, because you never know when you're going to get there.
Right.
And you don't compare yourself with other people. This is your individual journey, and we all have it. And at the same time, it's like you have to enjoy the process. And sometimes that's being like within jiu-jitsu, like I would smile and laugh, and people be like trying to hurt me and choke me out. And I'm like smiling as I'm getting ready to black out, and I'm tapping out. And I loved it. I loved the punishment because I knew I was getting better. I knew I was learning it better.
Never loathing the process.
Yeah. When you become a black belt, it doesn't mean that that's it. No, it means now you have all the skills to go on and you can learn stuff by yourself. Like you'll see things and you'll be able to, you have the skills now to continue to advance and help teach yourself. And that's it. It doesn't mean you've arrived. You don't ever arrive. And same with life, same with teeth. You know, you'll never have a perfect case. There's one case that, I mean, I see great cases and my own sometimes where I'm like, man, I did a great job, but I still know it's not perfect. I still know it's not as natural as it could have been. There's all these different things I wish I would have, should have, could have, but you know what? I'm doing it, you know, and you have two choices in life, the pain of regret or the pain of change. And so I like to pursue the pain of change. I don't want to have regrets. I want to do. And you know, I almost died last year. It's my anniversary of my death. I accidentally drove off a cliff 108 feet.
Those pictures were scary. Dane. I mean, anybody that would see that picture, they would say, wow, man, the guy took a hit and we feel bad for his family. But here we are.
The cops were looking at me like I was a ghost. They pulled the guy out of that same spot the year before. Took him 3 months to find him. He was locked in his cab of his truck. Yeah. And it was at the bottom of the river. It's 35 feet deep.
And then on top of that, nobody wanted to go and chain up the truck. So you went in there and chained it up so that they could bring it out.
we hired a swiftwater diver professional to go down and hook it up for the tow truck. Nope, he got scared. I actually had to swim the guideline across the river and tie it to a tree. Wow. And then I came back across the guideline, and then they're like, "You want to hook it?" And I said, "Yeah, give me the tanks." I said, "I don't want the bodysuit. I don't want all that crap. I don't want. Just put the tank on my back, and I will go hook that thing up." And so, yeah, I swam down and I hooked it to the crane. And actually, that was the first time I saw my truck since rolling down the hill. And when I looked at it, it was so surreal. I was like, "There's no way the guy that drove this truck survived. There's just no way this guy survived." No. And yet it was me. Like I survived. It was a miracle.
Absolutely.
108 feet, landed in the middle of the river, and then sank. And then I had to get out of the car and swim back up. And people die in that river just whitewater rafting. So I'm like, oh crap! Like I got to get out of the rapids, you know. And we're at high flow. You know, it's 35 feet deep, and we're at high flow. It's a spring runoff. And so I like envisioned myself doing a perfect Olympic freestyle swim. And I went into it. I was freestyle champion, right? And I got to the edge of the river, and then I felt all this pain, like I severed the muscle in my leg, and I cut my head, my hand went out the window. Actually, I didn't have my seatbelt on, so I went out the window and pulled myself back in. I mean, it was a very scary situation, and in the middle of it, you know, your life passes before your eyes, conversations. 7 seconds is what it takes for this truck to fall that distance. And in that 7 seconds, I had hours of conversation. And I still smell the dirt. I know exactly what it smelled like. And in the middle of all that, I was like, you know what? I've lived a good life. I lived a good life, and I left it better than I found it. And it's okay. Yeah, it's okay if I die. And I mean, I didn't give up. I fought to the end, and obviously I survived. Don't know how, but I did. I survived. But I'd reached that understanding that I have enjoyed my journey, and I've done the hard thing, and I've done things that others would shy away from, and you know, and I've helped a lot of people, and that, you know, I didn't have regrets. I just knew that I'd done what I was supposed to do, and I was okay with that. And but I survived, you know, and I'm at it again. I'm trying to do some more difficult things and just keep it going, you know. It's
God is good. God is good.
Exactly.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure having Mr. Dane Barlow with us. Dane, where can we follow you? What's your Instagram, Twitter, Facebook? How can we find you?
So Facebook is just Dane Barlow. It should come up pretty quick. Twitter, Instagram, all the others, it's Smiles by Dane. My website, Smiles by Dane. So yeah, Smiles by Dane. You'll find me on anything just about. And then I think YouTube's probably Dane and Dental, or you know, even it might be Smiles by Dane as well on YouTube. So I got some videos on there. You can check out some charity cases and just some jiu-jitsu videos.
Dane, it's been a pleasure having you. Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for tuning in and listening to Mr. Dane Barlow. Dane, thank you so much. We hope to have you back on the show, and we will see you next time, folks. Have a good
All right. See you later.